Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving straight into a really fascinating, intense historical debate, one that theologians obsessed over for decades: the deep mystery of what Jesus actually thought about himself.
You know, around the turn of the 20th century, a lot of scholars got completely fixated on this one single, incredibly personal question: what was really going on inside the mind of Jesus of Nazareth?
And this wasn't just some academic curiosity. A theologian named Frederick Godet put it perfectly. He basically said that if you don't understand what Jesus believed about his own identity, you can't really understand Christianity itself. It's the absolute bedrock. So, okay, let's get into it.
Now, this whole investigation wasn't just a big, messy argument. It actually boiled down to 4 crucial points of disagreement. And these 4 points, man, they became the battlefield for all these competing theories about who Jesus thought he was.
Think of these 4 questions as a kind of roadmap. It's what scholars used to try and piece together a psychological, even a spiritual portrait of Jesus. And remember, they were using the Gospels as their main source, which, as you can imagine, isn't always straightforward. In fact, it's often contradictory.
All right, so let's jump into the first major point of conflict. Did Jesus have it all figured out from the very beginning, like he was following a fixed blueprint? Or did his understanding of his mission change over time? Did it evolve as things happened around him?
I mean, it's wild. Scholars couldn't even agree on when he might have had this realization. You had some, like a guy named Weiss, who argued he knew from a very early age. Then there was a super popular theory from Beischlag and Wendt, who pointed to his baptism as the key aha moment. And then, of course, you had others who said, no, it was a slow burn, a gradual thing that unfolded over his entire ministry.
And this right here, this really frames the central conflict perfectly. Was Jesus just reacting to events as they happened? Like the growing opposition he faced? Or was he following some kind of predetermined divine path that he understood all along? Your answer to that question completely changes how you read the Gospels. It changes everything.
So, to back up that evolving view, the theologian Beischlag, remember him? He laid out these 3 distinct stages he thought he saw in Jesus' thinking. He proposed that Jesus started out believing in an immediate triumph, like the kingdom is coming right now. Then he realized, okay, this is going to be a long-term project. And finally, he concluded that the ultimate victory would only come after his own death.
Now, this whole question of an evolving mission is totally tied into another huge piece of the puzzle: the very words Jesus used for himself. The debate wasn't just about his actions, it was about his titles. Theologians basically became linguistic detectives, trying to decipher what Son of Man and Son of God would have actually meant to a first-century audience. First up, we've got the enigmatic title, Son of Man. On the surface, it seems pretty straightforward, but was it meant to emphasize his humanity? His connection to all people? Or, and this is a big or, was it a well-known code for the Messiah, drawing on prophecies from the Old Testament?
And the interpretations they came up with were, well, they were all over the map. For a scholar like Wendt, it was a statement of human weakness and humility. For Beischlag, it was a claim to be the ideal man, the perfect representative for all of humanity. And then for others like Baldwin Spegg, it was much simpler. It was a direct, unambiguous way of saying, I'm the Messiah.
And, you guessed it, the exact same puzzle applied to the title Son of God. Everybody agreed to describe his relationship to God the Father, but the core debate was all about the nature of that relationship. Was it an ethical one, a kind of moral and spiritual closeness that anyone could aspire to, or was it something metaphysical, something utterly and uniquely different?
This just illustrates the 2 camps so brilliantly. The ethical sonship view saw Jesus as the perfect role model of what it means to be a child of God, an ideal for all people to strive for. But the metaphysical view argued that his sonship was of a different kind entirely. It was an essential part of his being, a unique, absolute relationship that set him completely apart from all of creation. And believe me, that single distinction continues to shape Christian theology to this day.
Proponents of that unique metaphysical sonship, they pointed to subtle clues in the text, like this one. They noticed that when Jesus taught his disciples to pray Our Father, he never actually includes himself in that hour. He always maintains a distinction, saying, my Father when talking about himself, and your Father when talking about them. It's a tiny detail, but for them, it meant everything.
So why should we care about this century-old theological squabble? Well, because it wasn't just an academic exercise. This represented a seismic shift in how Western thought approached the whole idea of divinity and the relationship between the human and the divine.
A theologian named Rudolf Grau just captured the stakes so powerfully.
See, the traditional view was always that God became man. But this new line of questioning, by focusing on the development of Jesus' human consciousness, was subtly flipping the script. Now the idea was becoming, the man Jesus has become God. And that is a profound change in perspective.
So here's the crucial point. This debate was about more than just Jesus. It showed how historical study was starting to focus on the inner, psychological lives of key figures. It proved that you could give people the exact same evidence, the Gospels, and they could build completely different profiles. And ultimately, it showed that the questions we ask of history can sometimes be way more revealing than any single answer we find. And all of this leaves us with a final, provocative thought to chew on. When we study the great, influential people of history, or even of our own time, are we really seeing them as they were? Or are we, just like those theologians a century ago, just building a version of them that happens to fit perfectly with our own ideas and expectations? Something to think about.